Hey friends, Andy here from Raphah, and I want to pick up where I left off in my last video, where I started this series looking at how I make an ambient track from start to finish. And in the last video, which if you haven't seen, I will link in the description below, I created and developed a pad sound, which I'm now going to use as a backdrop, as a canvas against which to work on some chordal and melodic ideas to start giving this track a bit of structure and to start telling a bit of a story with where it's going. Just as an aside, this track I'm hoping will appear on a forthcoming album that I'm working on, and the theme of that album is going to be grief. Dealing with bereavement, dealing with all those emotions and those life-changing experiences and reflecting that in the music. And so what I want to do with this session is to start to paint that picture. I'm not quite sure where this is going to fit in the album, but I want this to start with kind of a minor melancholy feel and then moving towards the end of the track to something a bit brighter, a bit more hopeful. And so let's bring up the Logic screen. You'll see there what we were working on last time, which was the pad, and I utilised the noir felt instrument for that. You can hear that in the background, sounding very nice. And what I'm going to do is use the same noir felt, but this time a patch that I worked on and developed to sound how I wanted it to sound, called Expressive Felt. And incidentally, I was using that earlier today on a different track and discovered completely by accident that if I press the sustain pedal at exactly the same time as I play the chord, it gives this gorgeous resonant harmonic sound. So that was a pleasant surprise, and often that's how these things turn out, one of those happy accidents. So as I work on this track, hopefully you'll hear some of that coming through, and it just adds to the texture and richness of the track. So let's start putting some ideas down. And I think I will start with kind of a A minor to a G to an F. So let's stick with that as a starting point. So we'll let it build. Sounding quite nice. Hear that harmonic sound in the background. Okay, that's quite nice. So there's no click, as I mentioned in the last video, and I'm just kind of playing by feel, just to really give some emotion. If you're playing to a click, there's obviously a place for that to keep things in time, but sometimes it just doesn't let it breathe the same. Let's listen back to that. So I've kind of spread the chords. I'm not just playing them as straight chords to add a bit of interest as well. Just adding those extra passing notes just to give each set of chords a little bit of a different feel. Let it hang. Okay, yeah, I quite like that. So that's kind of the same repetition of that chord pattern. And then I think I'm going to introduce something a bit different. So we're about halfway through the track now. Let's go back. Use that as a lead in, and then I think I might let me go here. In fact, I'm going to quickly scribble those chords down. It's always a good idea to scribble down what you've done, otherwise you come back to it and you think, what on earth chords did I play? So it was an A minor, G, F. Okay, and then let's just play that through, and I'm going to come up to let's let that hang. Ambient music's as much about space and time as it is about playing the chords. Right, let's go for a... So we've got G. Vary that a bit. Okay, that's quite nice. My daughter came in halfway through that, so I was a little bit distracted. I wasn't quite sure what I was playing, so let's see where we are. Okay, I quite like that as a middle section. Now what I think I'm going to do, because I want to repeat this first section, but not in the same way. So I'm going to use the same basic chord structure. In fact, let me write down what I've just done there. So we've got a G to an A minor, to a D to a kind of C-type chord. So I want to bring this first section back in, but with a different feel. So instead of doing an A minor G F, I think I'm going to do like a C as the relative major to the A minor, G, and then an F. So if we do... and let's do like a G over an E minor. We go like that. And then to a just more of a standard F rather than the sus2. That gives it more of a final triumphant feel rather than something more suspenseful. So we've got the C as the major. That's just a fairly standard major first inversion on the top. And then this chord I really like, G over an E in the bass to F. So let's get that down. It's not the chord I wanted to play at all. Let's try that again. That's the one. So I'll go back and fix that. Okay, so we've got 3 distinct sections now. And what I'm going to do is just go through and make sure that the piano is sounding as I want it to. And just tidy up any loose ends So I'm going to mute the pad for the moment. That chord sounds a bit wonky. I don't like to mess too much with the MIDI because I want it to be as I played it and with the feeling and emotion at the time, but sometimes a few tweaks are necessary, particularly around the velocity, because some of the notes stand out a bit too much and some are a bit quiet. So here we've, yeah, that's that F in particular is just a bit on the quiet side. Let's play that. Yeah, that sounds a bit better, just a bit more uniform. Those nice harmonics, if you can hear those, sound great. That all sounds fine. I've just boosted the reverb slightly as well. I've got a sidechain reverb on this. Oh, annoyingly, I can't see the slide bar because it's behind my camera. I didn't think that one through. Right, let's listen to this section. I'm happy with that, so let's fast forward to this bit. This is the wonky chord. Yeah, that's not what I wanted at all. So let's fix this. So we've got F in the bass, that's fine, that's what I wanted. I want to get rid of that D. I think just an F and an A in there. Nice, but a bit quiet. Better. Good. Okay, now I might repeat this final section again so it mirrors the opening section here and repeats 4 times, but for the moment I'm going to leave it. But I'm pleased with how that sounds. I mean, that's some nice chord progressions. Again, I might come back and play with some of the voicings to add some interest, but I think as a structure and as a storytelling of this track, it's nice. As I said at the beginning, starts minor, moves to that more hopeful, uplifting middle section, and then it comes back down in terms of dynamics, but it's still got that major flavour because I've adjusted the chords there to sound a bit more happy and hopeful. So I'm fairly happy with where that is now, and I'll leave the next stage to another video. I think next time I will either work on adding in some bass or some strings or some additional pads to start filling this out and adding some interest and a bit more motion and emotion. So thank you again for joining me. Again, I hope that's been interesting and useful if you are a musician looking to understand my process. I'm not an expert by any means, but it's great to be able to share this process with you as you come along on the journey of how I create ambient music. So I shall see you soon. Take care.